And thank you all for coming today. This is the first session of our Grow Your Network series, and we're really happy to have everyone. Just so you know, the focus of this, since you probably saw it on social media or through some type of email, it's on expanding your professional networks. So this will be connecting with influential voices, uncovering new job opportunities, and fostering meaningful relationships with fellow professionals. To do that, we have a panel of folks from 4 different areas to really discuss this. We will have Master Chief Jason. He's going to start off tonight, but he's from the military sector. And then we have Karen from the student perspective, myself from academia, and then Mike from industry. Each person, what'll go is we'll have like a minute introduction, and then they will have 6 minutes to speak, and we'll have someone to time and make sure people like me aren't long-winded. There are questions that have been asked, and we're going to save those for the end. So really we'll have each panelist, and then afterwards we'll have a Q&A. So I'm really excited to start tonight. Let's scroll here with Master Chief Anthony Jason Matalunas. And just a quick description of him. He is the Chief Rating Knowledge Manager for the United States Coast Guard. And Master Chief Matalunas completed the United States Coast Guard's Performance Technology Program and has a passion for HBT, or as he said a second ago, he's an HBT nerd. So very excited. Please welcome him. And I will turn this over to Nicole, who will take care of moderating and asking the questions.
Fabulous. All right. So to start us off, Jason, if you could tell us what you believe the most important skills that are needed for a new professional to build their network.
Sure. I would say be humble and cast a wide net, because not everyone's going to get back to you. You're not going to be able to foster a relationship with everyone, but those that you do, you just connect with them and be willing to help them as much as they're helping you. And it's been very successful for me. I know one of my mentors, Jamie Porciani, she's on the line. She's in the meeting. It was just by coincidence. I walked up and I was like, hey, I really liked your presentation at a conference, pointed out some specific things that I liked. And then we connected later, and then we've been connecting ever since. She's been a great mentor, and because I'm not familiar with how things are done in the private sector. So I'm trying to find people on my network that aren't doing the things I'm doing, so I think it sounds simple, but it's difficult to cold call people or just go up to them, but it's to build your network and foster those relationships. You have to do that.
And sometimes that's a little bit scary, particularly for undergraduate students. Do you have advice for maybe different advice or some strategies for undergrads?
Yeah, so I know for me, I look past that assignment you're working on and take some risk and try to find the most challenging way to do it so you actually get those skills. I didn't do that in my undergrad program. I did it in my grad school program. So I really learned more. I was able to apply more afterwards. And what I did was I started finding ways I can volunteer to try and do these things before I actually started my new job, where it was going to be expected of me to do it. So like I built a instructional website for my church. I did a website analytics project for local organization, completely free, low risk. I'm like, hey, I'd like to help out and test out some of this stuff that I learned. And I felt like it paid extreme dividends, because in college you're in a kind of a sterilized environment, and they teach you those great foundational things, but once you go to apply them, it's different. And getting that experience and putting yourself out there and taking risk is I think is great. That's what I wish I had that advice given to me when I was an undergrad. I was always so scared about passing everything and, not taking those risks, but it will definitely pay dividends later on.
Did you keep a portfolio of some of these volunteer projects that you were doing?
I did, yeah. Building the portfolio is definitely key. For me now, with the work I do now, I can't, post a lot of the stuff I have in my portfolio, but that's where those volunteer opportunities, come into play. Is like, I think I have a link to some of the analysis I did that weren't, confidential or for official use only, as well as some websites and things I built, just so employers or even people wanting to network with me can see, kind of where my skill set is.
So let's talk about some of your inspiration. If we could scroll back up just a little bit, you gave us 3 influential voices. Can you tell us a little bit about them?
Yeah, Jamie is super inspirational. Owns her own company, Exemplary Performance. She's been a mentor of mine for a while. I don't know how she does all the things she does. She's absolutely amazing, but she's a true pragmatic HBT practitioner. She believes in it, and she believes in performance improvement, and she's able to take it from a couple different perspectives. So like an athletic perspective as well as a business perspective, and I think it covers a much wider scope of people. So the way she explains HBT, I think just it makes it so more people understand it, because sometimes I think it's a little bit hard to explain what we do, but when you're bringing in things like sports analogies or tying into different things, get more people. Michael Quinn, transitioning jobs. So those of you that are going to be graduating soon or switching positions, that guy is incredible. He's very veterans focused. He's got his own company. He's one of LinkedIn's top voices, but how to set up your LinkedIn page, all that stuff, and how to network, that's the guy to go to. And then Guy Wallace, that guy he takes these very complicated, well-researched models and just puts it in a way, here's how you use it. Here's exactly what you do, step by step. It's got a lot of books out there, a lot of practitioner books. And then just following him, he just kind of always refers back to the basics, the foundational things that are well-researched and just work. So I recommend those 3 very highly.
Fabulous. And can you talk a little bit about what led you to pursue a career in the military in this field?
Yeah, so this isn't a track like in the military. This is a specialized thing. I had no idea what any of this stuff was. I took a tour as an instructor, and I was sitting. So I was a leadership instructor, and I'm sitting in a room, and people around talk about HBT and stuff, and I'm like, whatever. I just want to kind of get through this tour. It was fun, but I want to get back to doing marine science work. That's where my heart is. But the training officer, she was had a strong HBT background, and she ran us through Gilbert's an exercise using Gilbert's behavioral engineering model. So she's like, okay, everyone, write down a goal that you have. So we all wrote a goal down on a sticky note, and she goes, okay. And then she uncovered the 6 boxes, and she's like, put them in, what's the main reason why you're not able to accomplish it? What's causing that performance gap? And just like the research says, like 80% of it was environmental, and then she's like, look, see this first individual one, that's the only place training fixes these things. And I was like, whoa. I'm like, I was hooked. Like from that point on, I was like, I gotta learn more about this stuff. So I was very blessed that people pushed me in this direction, and I've been doing it the last almost 11 years.
Wow. It's almost like this industry chose you.
Very, very lucky.
Do you have any final thoughts about networking or how to find a job that, or advice for someone new to this field?
Just put yourself out there, ask people, it is tough. It's easy for me to say, like, just reach out to people and ask for advice, but you have to do it. Like it's just and just it'll all work out, you know. But there's a lot of people out there willing to help you, but no one will help you if you don't ask.
Well, thank you. We definitely appreciate having you here. We're going to have some question and answers after all of our panelists speak. So if you're in the audience and you have a question, feel free to save it. We'll have some Q&A and you'll have a chance to ask another question in a minute.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Our next panelist is Kate Durden. She is an instructional design and multimedia coordinator at the University of West Florida. A former K-12 teacher, she works with faculty to integrate technology and multimedia in the online classroom. She's also an adjunct clinical education instructor for the School of Education. So please welcome Kate.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, Kate. Thanks so much for joining us today. So we have a couple questions for you in regards to instructional design. Do you have any advice for anyone that is looking for maybe people or organizations to follow to really garner like a true connection in this field?
So I really like to, I'm newer to the field, and I realized I probably should have put, since I'm the student perspective, I'm a student in an IDT master's program right now at UWF. And so I'm newer to the field. And so what I found really helpful is joining online communities of practitioners. So Facebook groups, subreddits, things like that, where I can have conversations with people that are working in the field and kind of have a give and take conversation versus, and I do follow people in the field, but my background's K-12, so a lot of the sort of experts and things come from that environment. And so I really lean on that social media and those groups to, if I have a question or, and I learn a lot from those, platforms that I didn't know existed, technologies that I wasn't familiar with, anything. And then also, career advice, things like that. We had an assignment when I first started the program where we had to interview IDT practitioners, and I was able to go into one of the groups and say, hey, is there anybody that would be willing to help me out? And I met several people that were very helpful, let me interview them. And so, and you form relationships with those people online. So I think that's really been one of the most helpful things for me.
Sometimes it's hard to like put yourself out there, but maybe is it easier, you think, online?
Yeah, and I'm introverted. I'm very introverted. I have a hard time, just walking up to people, and Jason mentioned going up to somebody at a conference and saying, "Oh, it's great," and that's really I struggle with that. That's an area that I need to improve in, and so yeah, it is, I think, easier to form those relationships sometimes, and you do get. You do meet people that we actually, one of my colleagues in our instructional design department, she works there because she was in one of these groups and had a conversation with our supervisor and ended up getting a job that way. And so, yeah, it definitely is for somebody like me, especially it's much easier.
Do you feel that the pandemic maybe shifted some of these processes and some of the work for instructional design?
I do, definitely. For one thing, I think people are starting to discover the field, where maybe pre-pandemic, it was a little more behind the scenes, now it's more to the forefront, people, many more organizations, many people are more aware of instructional design, and especially that instructional design aspect. So like online training, distance training, that kind of thing. The field has blown up, and there's also a lot of people, I'm a K-12 teacher that came into this, and there's a lot of K-12 teachers that are coming into that. So there's, I think, a different pool that the industry is pulling from now than maybe they were 5 years ago. Different skill sets, and again, a different comfort with what we do and what possibilities are. You know, a company organization that might have been hesitant to do distance learning previously is maybe more on board now. There are companies where they're fully remote, where they didn't used to be, and that changes the way that, you know, an in-person training is completely different from an online training and that kind of thing. So and same thing in the K through 12 space. So yeah, I think it shifted a lot.
So it seems like there might be some more people trying to enter this field than there was previously. Is there anything you can think of that maybe a young professional or somebody new coming into the field can do to set themselves apart from others?
I think having a strong portfolio is really important. Trying to take the things that, you know, that you're doing, if you can in your job, if you can from school, building out things that are even maybe not necessarily real world examples, but things just to show your skill set. I think learning multiple types of skills is also good nowadays. I mean, I think it's very common for a job to say you need to have, you know, you're basically now a graphic designer and a technology coordinator and a IT guy, and you know, you're a software engineer. You know, there's all these different hats that you have to be able to wear. And I think diversifying your experience, you know, if you're really interested in HPT, it might still be useful to learn how to use Illustrator or InDesign or something like that. Familiarize yourself with those types of tools, because you might end up, you know, even if it's not something that is part of the job description, you might stand out because you know HTML and CSS when another candidate doesn't, or maybe you're proficient in Creative Cloud and another candidate is not. And so I think diversifying those skill sets would really be helpful.
Awesome. And can we scroll up a little bit and maybe talk about some of your influential voices that you said might be good for us to look at?
Yeah, so the first one, Holly Owens, I love her because she does a weekly job posting. So she sort of culls the instructional design job listings and finds interesting ones, kind of shares them out to her followers. And I think that's really helpful, both even if you're, you know, obviously if you're looking for a job, but also just to sort of see what the field is doing and what everyone's kind of looking for right now. So I think she does it every Friday, and I find that really helpful. She also has a lot of experience in the corporate world, which I don't, so it's nice to see that different perspective. And then Daphne Gomez, she focuses specifically on teacher transition into IDT, and so she shares out a lot of resources that are very specific for that group, which again is something that applies to me. That's my background. And then your instructional designer she shares these sort of little tips and tricks, and it's like little bite-sized morsels. And she actually just released a book, or maybe she shared out the book. Now that I'm wondering if she just shared it out, but a book of scenarios to use for portfolio building. And so it gave, it's on Kindle Unlimited if you have it. But it has like different case scenarios that you can use to build out your portfolio and things like that. So she shares a lot for people coming into the field, and then also people that are currently working in instructional design, and just sort of little tidbits to help make your days easier.
Fabulous. Well, thank you. Our time has come to an end, and I appreciate, I'm excited. I'm going to go stalk some of these voices that you talked about. And again, if you're in the audience and you have a question for Kate, you can save it for after we have all 4 panelists, and we'll have a chance for some last minute Q&A.
This is going to be interesting because I'm going to introduce myself. This wasn't our original intent, but I'll try to speak in first person so APA doesn't get upset that I'm speaking in the third person. I am currently a adjunct professor at the University of West Florida, adjunct professor at Florida State University. I start as a full-time assistant professor at UWF in August. I've worked at universities for 9 years, at FSU mainly. And I'm really excited to talk to you. Yeah, and Master Chief is also a graduate of FSU. I think there may be a few of them in here. So I'm excited to talk to you today about the perspective from academia. Saying that, of course, that can mean a whole bunch of stuff. I'm going to kind of look at it from the lens of like professor, but really when we think of academia, I mean, you can really do anything in academia. You could run a Center for Advancement of Teaching, or you could be doing tutoring, or you could focus on administration. So I'm going to kind of talk at it from a professor scope, but if there is anything in academia that you're very interested in, the libraries, let me know, and I can try and look at it from that scope as well.
All right. Well, we will start off with your professor hat. Can you tell us if you're seeing any new trends in research and some of the stuff that's coming out as a result of the pandemic?
Yes, absolutely. One thing, and if we do this from an HBT perspective, change management is the big thing I focus my research on, and I'm currently conducting research on how change management has changed throughout the pandemic. So a lot of it that we could kind of talk about, and there's different perspectives on how it's led. But the main scope we see is a lot of research suggests it takes 2 years for a change to kind of happen if it's implemented correctly. So the pandemic being a forced change kind of forced everybody to go to this new thing, and it took 2 years. Well, after that, everybody's like, okay, go back. Well, that would require another change. Is that another 2 years? So that's a lot of things we're kind of focusing on. A lot of the research I was doing before the pandemic, they were scared of Zoom. No one wanted to do Zoom. So now here we are. This just kind of seems like regular, meeting or conversing or community of practice. But that was something that kind of had like this change. I think now there's kind of academia has issues with determining how to balance in-person and online. Hybrids are very common now. But I recall before the pandemic, undergrads especially were not really into online as much as in person when it came to a lot of it. And now I see a flip. So I think there's a lot of, changing what is the new norm. And of course, academia has two sides to it, because conducting research is another side. It's not just doing stuff, it's also what's happening and how is that happening. So I think that's a big thing that the pandemic kind of led to.
Do you have any advice if a student is really interested in pursuing a path in research related to HBT? Do you have some advice on where they can start, who they can follow, what they can do?
Yes, I actually have a list. Here it is. It was almost like this was planned, right?
Magic.
This I would say is my top 10 list. I won't necessarily say I went through to determine what order you should do these in, but kind of how I do it. So 10 ways to grow your network in academia. The first is join associations. So it's very easy to find people who are interested in the same things you're interested in. For example, if you like HBT or you like performance improvement, you could join ISPI. I think that's a real quick way to kind of make sure that your network is people who have these similar interests. So same research communities, similar types of service, specialized skills. Provide service to organizations. This is another great way to grow your network, because you get to kind of help promote the organization, and they also know who you are. So this could be, a board member, a committee member, something you're interested or just passionate about. Sometimes these are elected, but it doesn't have to be. Sometimes it's volunteer based, and of course, make sure you have time to serve on it. If you don't have time necessarily to serve on like a committee, there's other things you could do. You could be a peer reviewer for like a journal article, things like that. People are very interested in knowing how you can help them out. Attending conferences. This is a huge way to grow your network. Even the social events at conferences. I've met probably more big name people at like the little dining events they have. So usually you just go sit next to someone, and as you'll notice, everybody's looking at everybody's lanyard to see who they are or where they're from. So that's really a big way. My belief is if the lanyard's on, go ahead and chat with them, even if they're kind of outside the conference. If it's off, okay, maybe find a way to chat with them when it's on. To be very meta, attend virtual events like this one, right? We're developing our community of practice right now. And this is people from academia and military and industry and students. So these topics are specific to your interests or focus. Presenters often leave their contact information, or as we have here. So you are definitely invited to grow your network by following people on LinkedIn or things like that. Getting into LinkedIn, social media is giant. When I was conducting research for my dissertation, I would just message people on LinkedIn, and there were so many amazing people. Like the head of ATD responded to my message like immediately. And Tony was awesome and helped me and was like, okay, how can we help promote your research and get it out there? And I wasn't even a member. I just messaged him to see if he could help. So I think a lot of people pay attention on social media. One of the people I have linked to mine, Devlin Peck, he's an influencer, but an instructional design person. So you can get on social media and talk to influencers who do this. Research collaborations across, oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, let's go over there and you can tell us about your 3 influential voices.
Yeah. And I went mainly in kind of going with this list we talked about. I went with divisions of organizations like AECT. I think something great about AECT is they have so many different divisions that focus on your specific interests if you're on the instructional design side. But there's organizational training and performance. You could go that route. Design and development. So you can really be a part of these organizations and find a way to kind of cater to your specific interests. Devlin Peck, he is the one I was talking about on LinkedIn. He claims to help instructional designers upskill and land opportunities, and he does. And he puts a lot of interesting things out. Like right now he's talking, and I should have mentioned this earlier, like ChatGPT and how are you going to use that, for performance improvement or instructional design. That's something he's with now. And
it's actually kind of interesting. I need to go find that.
yeah. And really just type in his name on LinkedIn and he pops up. And then of course, a meta response is we will go with ISPI. Here we are. But that this is a great way to grow your network in academia as well. I love how ISPI kind of has multiple focuses. If you are into scholarship, they have Performance Improvement Journal, which is very great for practitioners. And then if you're focusing more on, empirical evidence and things, they have Performance Improvement Quarterly. So there's kind of 2 sides to the coin in ISPI.
Awesome. And for our lasting thought, can you give us advice that you might have for anybody like new to the profession or a student?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is people are interested in sharing their ideas with you and talking to you. Master Chief and I were talking about Vanessa Denon at FSU, and she's just very approachable. You talk to her and then you realize, oh, she's actually quite popular in the field. But most people who I've talked to in academia are very much like that. You have to remember these professors usually teach one class on their research interests, and that's the only time they ever get to talk about it. So when you kind of reach out of the blue and talk to them, they're excited. They don't get to talk about it all the time. So they're excited to hear about it. That also goes if you're someone who's using like validated instruments and someone has used one before and you want to, maybe borrow it. People are actually really nice about that. You can usually contact someone and say, hey, you mentioned using this instrument. Could I use it for research? So I think that's really the thing. We've kind of talked about it a few times. Take a chance, ask somebody, talk to them, introduce yourself.
Awesome. It was so great to hear your perspective. And again, if you have questions, if you're in the audience and you have a question, you can save it. We have one more panelist and then we'll open it up for last minute Q&A.
Fantastic.
And Jeff, you don't get a break. You get to keep talking.
I was about to say, now pretend I'm putting on a different hat. So our 4th panelist is Mike Van Dyke, and he runs his own consulting firm, which is Impact Training. And this is in the Florida Panhandle. Through his firm, Mike helps businesses improve their performance and drive results. And he's also an amazing person to hear from. He has fantastic ideas. So I'm excited to hear what he has to say.
Well, you're making my head swell, and I don't know if I can live up to that introduction, but at least I have the same hairstyle, so that's a good thing, Jeff. So at least we have something good in common. I am an old school guy, so a lot of the stuff I will suggest to you guys will be, will be some stuff. It's not going to be revolutionary, although it's the 4th of July. My jokes will be quite revolting for you, and there'll be old dad jokes, and there'll be things that probably are a little bit retro dated, but they work really well, and that's why I'm going to suggest them to you guys. So those are the things I'll talk about. Do you, Nicole? Thank you so much for doing the MC of it. How do you want me to start? You want me to start going into the questions that I've got notes on, or do you want to ask me questions directly?
Yeah, well, let's start with what advice would you give someone if they want to start their own consulting firm and be like you?
That's always a fun one to start off. Well, I'll start off with a great joke. You know what the difference between a consultant is? A comedian friend of mine told me this one. He goes, the difference between a consultant and a big, large pizza is a pizza can feed a family of 4. A consultant probably can't. So, when you start consulting, it is really, actually, I'm glad I'm seeing laughter because it's funny if it's not happening to you. It's really a comedy. When it's happening to you, it's a whole other business. If you're going to start consulting, though, I really recommend start with something you love doing and try work for somebody else. Then take that passion and pull it into something you can do consulting on, and take recommendation letters with you when you start doing it. It really starts with the one-on-one and getting to know people and trying to help them out and trying to do something that no one else really does. Because that's, I think that's what started the consulting stuff for me, is that I started doing something back when I was in student government at FSU, finished my master's degree. I did some stuff, I was in the instructional design program, but I did a program on parliamentary procedure. And then we did it online, and that was right around the .com time. And I loved helping student government, and I loved doing that. And that's what launched our initial company before we started doing consulting. And then we got really good at startups and really good at startup special projects. And that's what we started moving into. So it really starts with a passion and trying to work for somebody else. And I was working for other people at the time, learning those lessons. So that would be the first part about trying to be a consultant, is do something you love, but do it for somebody else first. And then take those lessons and pilot them out and being really good at what you do. Did that answer your question, Nicole, pretty well?
That did. I mean, that was a little bit scary, but also motivational at the same time.
It's both ways when you consult. So,
did the pandemic change the work that you do and how you do business?
Yeah, the pandemic changed it a lot. I will say that the pandemic basically became a boom industry for us. People want stuff fast. They wanted it right away. And then there became a question of fast versus quality. And we've always taken the high road on quality. I'd rather apologize about a high price once and great quality than explain why the quality is poor. And what we saw during the pandemic is everybody wanted their programs online. Everybody wanted to do something via Zoom. And we dabbled back in the education industry, K through 12, and it just was such a desire to get down there quickly and not really caring about what the results were. We backpedaled really quickly from that one because we knew that later on there'd be work on fixing the engagement. And that's what we did. And then the other thing I've always found very helpful is if you're going to be working with anybody, even during the pandemic times, this is true, look for an in-house instructional designer or somebody who knows your industry and knows what they're talking about, who has control of the purse strings that you're supporting. Because if you're not doing that, it's we're all nerds in a good positive way here. And if you're talking to somebody who speaks your language, besides the C-suite, the CEOs who fund that stuff, then you have somebody on the inside who can champion the cause that really wants you there. If you're just hired by somebody who's looking at numbers, it gets really confusing for them to understand what you're building, and there's no advocate inside. So having that stakeholder is very important, especially during pandemic where you can't go see the client in person. So we found that very useful for us.
Can you talk a little bit about like what inspires you and maybe some influential voices, or how do you find inspiration?
Well, it sounds arrogant on the slide when I look at it now, but it's really true. It starts with yourself, and really being quiet and listening to what inspires you, because hearing that, there's a lot of chatter out there. You guys know this. And I mean, there's a lot of things that are out there to listen to, but listen to yourself and what I want to go for first. And when I listen to that and hear what my passions are, and do a little bit of self-awareness, it really lets me decide what's right and what I want to go towards versus what I don't want to go towards. It's high quality, because we have a lot of advisors and we do a lot of teamwork, and that really helps out first. So it starts with the sort of introspective, and then it starts with, for me, friendships and developing those friendships from the mentors I had. You guys know about the last talk we did with Keller, and he was a professor, and that turned into a great friendship, a lifelong friendship. And we did a swan song the last time. But the reason that happened is because I took the chance to reach out to him. And I really think that something that Jeff just said is they want to talk about what they do. People love what they do in our industry. And if you reach out to them with a branch of friendship to try and find out what they're doing more of, they will talk to you. And if they don't, there's always somebody else. And those things will lead to better relationships later on for connecting and inspiration, that you'll see how, oh, well, this is how you built the relationships in Japan. And this is how you built your corporate business. And this is how you took this stuff from the class you taught to really apply the model of managing projects. And that kind of stuff is just, I've given a lot of the books to UWF, but there's just piles of stuff that comes from that it'll be beyond whatever you've dreamed of. And I mean, I don't care if it's with your dad or with a friend, but if you develop that into the mentor to a friendship, it really works out well. And that inspires me a lot. And the last one's sort of fun, but it is true. Look for happiness every day. There's enough bad stuff in the world. We can doom scroll the news all day long. But if you will find the happiness when you're a consultant, I'm not saying all of it's entertainment, but a lot of it is entertainment and making them choose, because if it's between you and someone else and they know that you care about them and you have a little bit of a sense of humor about it, then they're going to pick you over them, the other competitors. And if you can make it fun and engaging, if you don't have the attention, you're not going to get the other parts of the ARCS model. You don't get relevance, confidence, and satisfaction if you don't get the attention. And people pay, and you're competing against Netflix and everything else out there for people's time. Because now online, they can be watching it in the background. And if you aren't engaging, it makes it tough. So that's why I say look for the fun and follow it daily and pick something that you want to aspire to be like. I mean, I like some sarcastic comedians, but I realized that's not going to help a lot with the clients if I'm that way with them. So I picked ones that are a little bit cleaner and a little bit more fun. And if you have trouble with that stuff, because I got old and I got really involved with projects and I forgot how to have fun. So there's a book called The Power of Fun that Catherine Price did. She's a little bit of a younger whippersnapper, but she reminded me about a lot of things that I probably need to do more often. So that would be one that I would recommend picking up if you forgot how to make a fun squad, make playgrounds and do stuff that's enjoyable. It's a good refresher.
And our last question, if you could let us know, like if somebody's looking for a job, where can they go? Like a new professional in the field.
Start with your friends. Start with your friends and start with people you know and tell them what you're doing now, because your friends will not lead you wrong. Your friends and family, they might not know somebody, but that, we've all seen this 6 degrees of separation or Kevin Bacon or whatever you want to call it. It's fun, but it's really weirdly true. There is somebody you're connected to that knows somebody else. And it doesn't have to be on LinkedIn or something like that, because if it's really somebody who knows and cares about you, they will not lead you astray. I mean, we've all applied for the jobs that aren't real. We've all done that, and it's not fun. And sending out 1,000 resumes is, oh, that's great. Or worse, writing proposals for hours for things that don't get funded. Yeah, that's a winner product. So instead of doing those, start with people who care about you, because they won't put you in those situations. And then the second one is, I recommended, I think there's a link to it, the ATG job board. Our professional societies, we're here to support each other, and that's great because we make friendships, we make bonds. And then we have real things that we can go after, and they'll know if this thing's funded. And that ATG job board is so small and so nerd oriented. The only things that make it up there are people who really know what they're talking about, and they're not written well, but they're usually written like, hey, I need an ISD person who can do these 3 things. And if you're like, this is like, I wrote this. And that's a great place I find to look. That's where we picked up our last project. That was like a year-long project that was written by an internal ISD person that just, who knew, a multi-million-dollar project. It was sort of a cold call. And that's pretty rare, but it comes from those real places. Most of our stuff's referral, though. Did that answer your questions?
It did. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective.
Well, thank you so much for letting us be here. It's been fun.
Yes. So thank you to all 4 of our panelists. I think we got some great advice from different angles and different perspectives of the profession. And so now we're going to open it up. We have about 5 minutes for questions. If anybody, you can unmute yourself and ask, or if you'd rather put it in the chat. But if you have a question for somebody that wasn't answered already, please feel free to ask, and we'll put you all on the spot.
That's the best game, being in the hot seat. Well, while you're waiting for questions, I'll tell you that my humorous one was I almost killed Dr. Keller when I went to see him after COVID, because I caught COVID from the ATD conference downstate. So that was a little bit of a change. Killing one of the founders of our field, there's a great idea.
He still let you be in the room. Last meeting, you were in the room with him, so he's still.
Well, you already
trusted.
caught it by then, And I can't smell now, so I don't know if I sneak anymore, when I talk or in person. There's one. What are the top 2 conferences you recommend attending? Well, I guess I already shared one. ATD is pretty good. I would I'll just address that one sort of quickly. I would say that actually getting the connections and following up after the conference is just important. Going to the conference is really it's intense. There's a lot of stuff going on, so making those one-on-one connections is sort of hard. I think small regional groups are sometimes better, and even our small meetings here might be a more valuable use of your time. We spent what $10,000 plus going down to ATD. It was the same stuff I've seen 5-10 years ago, and I get more from you guys. I really do, on a personal and an impactful level. So those are my thoughts, and I'll be quiet.
No, I think it's great you share, especially because Mike, you have multiple hats also that you can help with. I mentioned AECT. That is, I kind of have to go with what Mike said. I think a lot of it is what your interests are at the time. If you tend to see the same research again and again, you might want to go to like a smaller niche kind of conference. Like for example, if you like open educational resources, well, they do have like OER conferences. I went to one in Anaheim, and so that was great just to focus specifically on that. I would say the conference to not go to is one where maybe you don't know anyone and you're not interested in having to meet every single person there. Because I have friends that do go to conferences by themselves, and they're really just spending the entire time networking, which is great, but they don't have that first introduction to people. So it's usually good to kind of, maybe ahead of time introduce yourself to people, so when you meet them at the conference, you're already kind of a step ahead.
One thing too with conferences, I hadn't ever, I'd been to them as a teacher, but I never thought I was a person who would present. I never thought I would be like, I who am I to tell people things, and I've started kind of coming out of that shell a little bit, that imposter syndrome. And so try to apply to conferences. Just you have an experience that's valuable. And so take the opportunities to share your knowledge. If you don't get accepted, you don't get accepted. But going as a presenter is a completely different experience, I think, than going as just an attendee. And so it's been interesting sort of putting my hat out there and submitting a proposal for a conference and just saying, this is my experience and this is what I have to add to the field. And even if it's, I'm not in the sector of academia right now where I'm, I don't have a paper to present or anything, but it's just my work experience. And it's gone really well so far. And that's helped me sort of, I presented at UPSIA early in the year. I'm presenting it two different sessions. And Michelle, I see Michelle in there. She's in one of our AECT presentations in October too. So as students, we're presenting with one of our professors from UWF. And so putting yourself out there and just putting in a proposal, a good talking about a good conference is one where people and can network and stuff. A good conference also is one where you've put in a proposal and you get to share your own experience.
That's so important because I feel like so many of us have that imposter syndrome. It doesn't matter what stage of your career you're at. So everybody experiences that. So it's good to hear how you've taken steps to kind of overcome that. Amy had a question in the chat about, does any of our panelists regularly publish articles, present at conferences, maybe talk about that side of growing your network?
I presented at the ISPI conference this past one, and I just reached out and put a proposal in, but through networking at the previous year's conference, they were like, "Oh, you should present at that next time." And then, I'm like, "What?" at that point I was like, just got my CPT, I'm like, I don't even know what any of this stuff is. But again, just like getting yourself uncomfortable, trying these new things. And yeah, it's, I suffer from imposter syndrome big time. And just even being invited to do this, I was like, Amy reached out to me and I was like, really? Okay, so yeah, I just put yourself out there. That'd be my advice.
And I would agree with that, with the chief on that, Jason. The imposter syndrome is really easy to get, but if you ever finish a project like the one you did for the church or anything, ask the person you did that project for, even if it's a volunteer project, for a reference letter. I know that's old school. I know that people probably don't, LinkedIn has a little post, but I mean a real reference letter. And when you feel bad about yourself, read through your reference letters and also include them in your resume, include them in the things, because if those are real letters, I had a sample I could show you guys. People will look at that and they'll go, this person, I can call this other person. They actually knew what he did and they talked about. And that really solves it. It goes with when you're trying to do the speech or anything like that. And although I can't talk about the details of what projects I did, the person can usually share what they want to about the project. And that's not me breaking any confidentiality agreements. And it makes it really nice. And and if you ever feel like you're not smart and you didn't do a great job, go back and look at that pile of letters after every project you finish, and after every other project when one goes bad, and you'll know you are. I mean, because you didn't get here by yourself. You got here by having a team of people and actually being able to figure things out. And that's usually what we get paid to do.
I will say that publishing does help grow your network. Because, for example, I published an ISPI and PIJ recently, and they sent me something that was like, hey, would you be willing to present on that at the next ISPI conference? So they do kind of pay attention to this stuff. That being said, you can also grow your network in a bad way, because there's a lot of predatory journals out there. I don't know if you know that. There's a lot of journals that want you to pay them to publish your stuff. And when you publish stuff, you will get emails nonstop from them that are like, oh, I loved your work. And then you just see where they copied and pasted it. And they try to get, so there are times when you may not want to grow your network if there's like a predatory journal trying to get you to latch onto them.
That is excellent advice. We have one more question in the chat. Looks like it might be directed to Jason. There are 2 military bases in the area of Esther, wherever Esther lives. She's got 2 bases to choose from, but she wants to know, like, what's a good way to get her foot in the door?
Yeah, so we train all the time. Like, I could not tell you how many opportunities there are for the military, DoD, Homeland Security, government in general, with training opportunities. So you can either, go the government route, like through USA Jobs, or start with a government contractor, because all these agencies have contracts, like a lot of ISD type contracts. And that's the best way to get your foot in the door. A lot of folks in my network, they start out in government contracting, which is not as doesn't take as much courage as private consulting, but there is, you don't have the stability necessarily as you would with a GS or government type position, but you get to know the people. You get to know exactly what their world of work is, and when a position opens up, you have a much greater advantage of gaining that position, because they're like, yeah, we just want you to keep doing this with us because you've been awesome under this contract. So lots of opportunities.
I would agree with that. If you start talking to the contracting companies too, they'll start calling you for consulting when they put in bids, and you can get paid for that because they need the expertise to put the bids in to get the team. You might not want to be on the team, but you can tell them what to put together to answer those questions, because usually the person putting together bid does not have an instructional system design background or any performance improvement background, and they don't know the lingo that was produced by an internal ID person or a human performance person, and they need that help to win that bid. And that's where you can get in there, not by knowing what the topic is, but by knowing how to solve that problem for them. And there are multiple companies looking for that when they're trying to bid.
How do you get in contact with contractors like this?
You start looking on Indeed or USA Jobs, and you start seeing when the bids are coming up. Of people will have the same job, but it won't be a real job yet because they haven't won the bid yet. So you don't want to apply for the job. You just want to contact the contracting company. It'll be the same job for multiple companies. It's very frustrating if you're trying to apply for the job. That's why I said use your network of friends, because you'll be applying for the same job with 5 different people and no one won the bid. And so you've just wasted all your time. But you just reach out to the company and then you can find out who's really in the lead for it. Or you can start contacting the base to find out about the contract directly if you know somebody out there.
So if you connect with me, you can look through my network. So like if you find people that work in this industry, look through their network. And I've got lots of government contractors in mind. And if you do like exactly like you said, what Mike said is, those friends of a friend of a friend, that's because it is like if those opportunities pop up and they're like, oh, I got that person. And, that's how you end up getting picked.
What area are you in? Where are you located?
I live in the Panama City area, so there's Tyndall Air Force Base, and then there's also the Navy base on the other side.
Okay. My network might not be the strongest out there, but you can always reach out to me see if I know who's bidding on what out there. Yeah, it's good to have friends.
Thank you.
Speaking of that, good to have friends. If you at this time, if you have a LinkedIn profile and you want to share the link in the chat, this would be a great way to gain some new immediate best friends. I'll be grabbing mine and sticking mine in the chat too. So we're rounding into the closeout of our meeting. So we'll share our LinkedIn profiles if you want to, no pressure, and feel free to gain 20 new friends immediately. And then we have, if you're interested in being a member, we have some information coming up about that as well. And so I'll quit talking for a second so that way people can focus on grabbing a link and throwing them in the chat.
Well, while people are throwing that in, I just want to say thanks again for the opportunity to be here. This was awesome, and big shout out to Amy Jones for recommending me for this. It's awesome. So great to meet you guys. I'm hoping to connect with all of you, but thanks again for the opportunity.
And of course, while we're getting to know each other, thank all the panelists, Jason and Mike and Kate. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise. As we're kind of building this virtual community of practice, I think that's the big thing is having everybody realize you are a part of this community of practice with us, regardless of what industry you're from. We're all, people who are interested in HBT and performance improvement. If you aren't a member, and I just put it in there, it's going to show up in between all the LinkedIn stuff. You can join our ISPI chapter. You don't have to be a member of ISPI to join. So there is a link in there, so you can hear more about everything that's going on. Of course, I'll let Nicole talk about the next event, and let you get a head start.
Yeah, so we have our next event coming up. So remember, this is part one. What you attended today was part one of a 2-part series. So our next event will be part 2 of Grow Your Network series. And it's going to be on Wednesday, August 30th at 5:30. And so our current idea is that every other month, the last Wednesday at 5:30. But you can certainly stalk us on all of our socials, and you'll see, we're not shy about promoting our events. So follow us on all of our socials. I think Lynn was going to put some stuff in the chat. Maybe Jeff did as well. But just follow us on everything and become a member. You'll also get emails, and it's free to be a member. So then you'll be instantly in the know and part of our cool kids club or the nerd group.
They're a great group. They're proud to be part of it.
Mike, are you the one that called us a group of nerds? I love it.
Nerds rule the world.
And Jason said he's an HBT nerd. So yeah, I it might be our theme. Maybe it's our mascot.
You to join. I want you to join.
Well, and again, thank you all for joining this meeting and having, the conversation with us and learning. Of course, let us know what you're interested in as well. If there are topics that as this community of practice you would like to chat about, that's what we're here for. You can chat about that on the social media. And we can even take topics for events in the future. So I really want to thank all the panelists again. Jason, Kate, and Mike, thank you so much. I want to thank everybody who is a member of our boards and committees, and Nicole, of course, for hosting, and everybody who's contributed so much to making this happen. Thank you. So it was a wonderful event. I appreciate everybody attending.
And we can hang on for another minute if because I know it's hard to kind of connect on everybody's links in the chat, so we can stay on for another minute if you feel like copying all those links and stalking each other.
Yeah, we won't go anywhere until everybody's gone. So even if you feel like chatting, still feel free, whatever you need. I'll go ahead and turn the recording off.